All right, now we're revisiting the passive side of the auction inside of Market Monkey. You already learned the mechanics of resting liquidity in the previous lessons, so nothing conceptually new is happening here. This lesson is simply about how Market Monkey displays that information and why we configure it the way we do. So let's start with the order book heat map. Just as in Bookmap, the heat map here shows resting limit orders organized by price. And again, these are unexecuted orders sitting in the order book. The brighter areas represent larger liquidity, where the more dim areas represent smaller liquidity or orders being pulled. You are observing how size positions and repositions in real time. Now, in the heat map settings, I currently have the HD heat map enabled. I chose the classic heat map style and I set the color map to acid sunset, but you can choose whatever color scheme you like, as most of these options here are all just visual preference. Now, you do have a filter slider and an HD SD button on the top of the toolbar, so you can adjust things on the fly if you wish. Again, like I mentioned before in a previous lesson, the SD or standard definition heat map creates liquidity levels that are larger in price or tick size than the HD heat map. So you may want to toggle the SD heat map on from the toolbar when you're zoomed out, or you might be on higher time frames so it's easier to see, and then switch back to the HD heat map when you're zoomed in or on lower time frames. Now, under aggregation here, we include all of the major perpetual and inverse selections you see here. This gives you a broader and more representative picture of resting depth. So it's important to see all the liquidity out there that truly matters. Here under intensity, we apply the low and peak filters to remove insignificant liquidity. Every book contains small, constantly shifting orders that rarely influence structure. So filtering keeps the display focused on liquidity that could realistically matter if price approaches it. I have the minimum set to around 100 Bitcoin, so it filters out smaller sizes that won't be as relevant. So we want to focus on big players here. We also enable the zoom tooltip so you can inspect exact values without cluttering the screen. Now, the zoom tooltip shows you where resting size exists and how it evolves. So you just hover over the heat map section that you want to see, and now you can see the amount of orders at that level and surrounding levels. Or you can also zoom in really close and see all the values that way as well. Now, let's look at the order book profile. Again, just like in the previous passive lesson in Bookmap, the order book profile is similar to the Bookmap's order book column. So this order book profile shows resting limit orders only. It tells you where liquidity is stacked and where the book is thin right now. It also updates in real time, so you're able to see stacking, pulling, reloading, etc. So let's take a look at the settings here. In the settings, we enable show values. This allows us to see the numerical value of the resting limit orders in the order book when you zoom in enough to display them. You can also set the width of the profile to however you like. That's just pretty much personal preference. Now, let's talk about the auto tick versus setting a fixed custom tick size on the heat map, because this also comes down to personal preference. But it's very important to understand how this works and how it relates to the same values you see on the order book heat map. So if you set this to auto, it'll automatically choose a tick size for you and change based on different parameters. So you may notice that the order size values you see on the heat map will differ from the order size you see on the order book profile. That's because they are different ticks. This again is just personal preference. It's not necessary to see the exact same numbers on the heat map as the profile, because you're still seeing the information you need to see either way it goes. However, if you do want to see the exact same numbers as the heat map and match it to your profile, you'll have to enable custom tick here. So to match the order book profile to the heat map, and specifically the HD heat map, you need to set the tick to 5, because the HD heat map displays in a $5 tick range. If you want to match the profile to the SD heat map or the standard definition heat map, you will need to set the custom tick size here to 25. The choice is ultimately yours, but as long as you are seeing where the liquidity is sitting, it doesn't matter all that much if you aggregate in $5 increments for ultimate precision, or $25, which is still extremely precise price levels. So at this point, you have now seen how both Bookmap and Market Monkey visualize the aggressive side and the passive side of the auction. The display and visualizations differ a little bit here and there, but the mechanics are identical. Now, in the next lesson, we shift from the resting intent to structural organization using TPO session volume profiles inside of Market Monkey.